I played FNAF VR Help Wanted 2 on the channel starting the day it came out, and I had a blast. If you haven't watched my videos on the game, you probably should, but only if you want to. Playing the game was fun on its own, but finding the new additions to the story of FNAF with this new release was a really fun time. In this video, I'll be doing a theory video on the game discussing my ideas for what it could be telling us and for what actually happened within the game itself. But let's not waste any extra time, let's just get into the theory. One of the bigger questions about this game is whether or not it is an actual VR experience like the first Help Wanted, but I feel like the answer to that is a bit difficult to answer because I feel like it goes deeper than that. To figure out whether or not this game is VR in-universe, we need to figure out who our player character is. So what do we know about the character we play as? Well, we play as an adult who is working to try and get a job at the Pizzaplex with the staff bots all replacing humans and us basically being the only human employee left. Our character also wears a Vanny mask. Based on just this, I think it would be reasonable to say that we play as Vanessa herself, just like we do in the first Help Wanted. After all, she seems to be the only human employee working at the Pizzaplex during security breach, and her having a Vanny mask would make perfect sense. But there's a problem with that. Outside of other evidence suggesting we play as somebody else, Vanessa started working at the Pizzaplex while other people were still working there. Vanessa gets the job at the Pizzaplex around the same time as the therapy tapes, which take place around the same time as GGY, where other human employees do exist, and that was also about 3 years before security breach. So Vanessa wouldn't be trying to get the job as the only human employee. There's two options for what that could mean then. First, it could just mean that we are the only human employee that will be tending to the people or basically doing anything other than security. And second, it could just be that Vanessa works a night shift and isn't there during the day, which would still make us the only human employee most of the time. As I said, there are other pieces of evidence that point to somebody else though. At the end of every round of Fazer Blast, the Carnival Rockstar Freddy animatronic, who we learn to be named Carney, claims that this game is fun for the whole family and that we look like we got kids. It's an odd detail that I only noticed when editing my first video on the game and had to return to for my second video to point out, because it's just so specific. It heavily implies that the character that we play as is a parent. At the end of the game, when playing Princess Quest 4, we swap characters, no longer playing as the princess and instead switching to playing as our protagonist for the rest of the game. There's a set of 6 graves with torches that we have to light up. However, if we light them up in a very specific order, Chica, Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, the puppet, an area in the ground opens up, revealing a chest, and inside this chest is a Bonnie mask. When we open that chest with the mask in it, we get an achievement called Lost Luggage, and the player remarks that the Bonnie mask looks familiar. The Ruin DLC went out of its way to talk about Cassie's dad and how he has a Faz wrench and how his favorite character was Bonnie and that he used to collect Freddy and friends' lunchboxes. He was mentioned enough times that it was definitely notable and interesting. Since his favorite character is Bonnie, is it a coincidence that the Bonnie mask looks familiar to him? We know Cassie's dad worked at the Pizzaplex and used a Faz wrench just like our player character in Help Wanted 2. Our character seeming to have kids also adds up, as of course he has Cassie. So personally, I believe our player character is probably Cassie's dad. Throughout Help Wanted 2, we have characters constantly asking us one question.
What makes you so special?
Nothing, I'm just scared. You said I have questions? But like, what if I don't have questions?
Special.
That's what Moon asked me a bunch. Alright, well.
What makes you so special?
Why does everybody ask me this? Hearing this from Moon the first time, I found it interesting, but the fact that it is later again called out by 2 other characters made me think it's definitely important. So what's so special about Cassie's dad? Well, I think it's the fact that he might have been there from the very beginning. A pretty popular theory for a while now has been that Cassie's dad is the Bonnie bully from FNAF 4. I always thought that was the sort of thing that had some evidence but not a whole lot, so it very well could be true, but it doesn't have to be. I still don't think he absolutely has to be, but I feel like the fact that specifically a Bonnie mask is familiar to us should be taken into consideration since the Bonnie bully wore a Bonnie mask. That would also explain what is special about Cassie's dad. He was the Bonnie bully. He was partially responsible for the Bite of 83. He was there from the very beginning. So now, back to the question, is this game VR? I think most people would say no, just because of the fact that we are literally wearing a Vanny mask that is warping the world, and taking it off shows us the real environment. I think many people would believe that we are in the real pizza place, but there's a couple things that make me believe otherwise. Mystic Hippo can say a lot of different things, but there's 2 things that really caught my eye. One was of course her asking why we're so special, but the other was this line.
Do you ever look at your hands? I mean, really look at your hands.
This really got me thinking of something that I would not have considered otherwise because it's a VR game, but the fact that she tells us to look at our hands has to mean something. When we're wearing the mask, our hands are VR virtual hands. But when we take off the mask, when everything around us is presumably unaltered, our hands are still virtual. In whatever world we are in, we have VR hands. But how? Well, this game is all about training a new human Fazbear employee to work at the Pizzaplex, playing all the minigames to see which job they are best at. What seems most likely to me is that this is a VR experience, but rather than a game for the public, it's just a VR simulation to train employees for the job. Something I totally predicted before we knew pretty much anything about the game, by the way. Also note that when we play minigames, we are opening up computer files, indicating that the minigames are not real, or at the very least, our player is not actually in those scenarios. However, the simulation was for when the Pizzaplex was open, and the animatronics when you take off the mask turn into their ruined form. What this seems to indicate is that the game was made a long time ago for up-and-coming Pizzaplex employees, but now the Pizzaplex is in ruins and the Mimic systems are infecting the virtual experience, displaying everything as they are now. Keep in mind that while the Princess Quest ending is canon, the Mimic was split up into multiple subroutines. Glitchtrap is only one of those. When Glitchtrap was brought into the Pizzaplex by Gregory, it overtook the Mimic that had been spread by the storyteller, altering animatronic behavior even further and corrupting and taking control of everything. But when the Princess Quest ending happened, the ending ruin follows, the Glitchtrap virus was destroyed. But the Mimic virus from the storyteller was still active, meaning the animatronics still have the Mimic in them, only now they're not evil because this piece of the Mimic never really was, only actually mimicking a grieving father and a 4-year-old. Sure, it does no aggression, but it's mostly just a little kid, and it doesn't really make the animatronics evil, instead only amplifying their behavior. What I'm trying to say is that the newer designs of the animatronics like Roxy and Chica, specifically their ruined forms which appear in this game, are a part of the Mimic systems, which is why they would appear here. What I think happened is that Cassie's dad somehow died and got trapped inside the VR experience, kind of like Under Construction, and now the Mimic is warping the VR experience. The question about that, though, is does he know that he is dead? Maya in Under Construction didn't know she was in VR until the end, after all the signs. In this game, Mystic Hippo asks if we've ever paid attention to our hands, almost seeming to indicate that he never noticed that they're VR. Who knows, but I feel like it's possible that he is dead and trapped in the VR experience without knowing it. So that's everything to do with our player and the nature of the game. Of course, it is possible that the gameplay isn't actually canon and that the game is just to explain stuff better, but I doubt that due to the way the game goes. What I want to talk about now is the Mimic. The Mimic really is one of the most debated topics and has been since it was first revealed in Tales from the Pizzaplex. Some people believe he's his own thing completely, but I and many other people have always believed that the Mimic program being the Glitchtrap virus is the most likely answer. I've always thought this was the case, I've actually talked about it in this video already, but the thing that made me so confident that it was true was the door to Glitchtrap's room in Princess Quest having a tree and castle walls which match the Baobab tree which is connected to the Mimic, and the theater near it in the Storyteller. That door also reappears in Princess Quest 4. But the endings of this game also very clearly tell us that the Mimic has to be Glitchtrap, which I've already based some of the ideas in this video on. In the Phastron ending, our vision glitches out, the mask stops working, and we appear in the broken down pizza place. In front of us on the stage there is a recharge station. It opens up, and Glitchtrap reaches out. This of course confirms Burntrap to be controlled by Glitchtrap. I personally think that was obvious enough already given Burntrap's glowing purple eyes, but some people weren't completely convinced. By now though, especially based on this, there is absolutely no denying it. After that, 5 Nightmare staff bots appear around us and reach for us before we transform into a robot, seeing our program booting up just like we saw at the beginning of Security Breach. When our robot awakens, we find ourselves to be the mask bot handing the Vanny mask to Cassie. It isn't exactly since we still keep it later, but it's almost like passing the torch. As Cassie's dad, we hand over the Vanny mask that we've been using this whole game to our daughter for her to use. However, Maskbot gives Cassie the Vanny mask which has the Mimic in it, and that leads to Cassie finding the Mimic. The Mimic is the one behind the Vanny mask, but the thing is, we clearly see Glitchtrap right before we see the Maskbot giving the mask to Cassie, which very clearly tells us that Glitchtrap is also behind the Vanny mask, in which case Glitchtrap has to be the Mimic. This also means that since Glitchtrap is Burntrap, that Burntrap is the Mimic, whether they're the same endoskeleton or not. He is controlled by the Mimic. At the end of the game, as I mentioned earlier, we can play Princess Quest 4, which controls really terribly by the way, but then we swap over to actually playing Princess Quest in VR. At the end of the level, we end up trading with Old Man Consequences, then we find ourselves in the Sister Location elevator, the version of it that we saw in the first Help Wanted 2 trailer. We're brought up through the elevator and up into what seems to be a claw machine. A giant Vanny appears outside, looking in at us in this giant claw machine. or a normal sized Vanny looks into this normal sized claw machine at tiny us. Kind of unclear since Moon and Glitchtrap are our size too. But yeah, Moon shows up and we give him the Glitchtrap plushie. Moon gives Vanny the Glitchtrap plushie and he transforms into the real Glitchtrap. He looks up and waves at Vanny before Vanny crushes him and then retreats into the darkness. But what exactly does all this mean? Well, I've seen one interpretation of this, but I haven't really seen much theorizing of this game outside of reading the spoiler chats for Help Wanted 2 and a couple Discord servers before starting work on this theory. I still haven't watched any Help Wanted 2 theory videos at all. Most people, at least that I've seen though, have interpreted this as Vanessa finally destroying Glitchtrap once and for all and being free. Again, I've only seen like 2 people talk about this, and maybe that's not even what they said. The way I interpret this though is that Vanny is still around even without Glitchtrap. In this ending, we see Vanny, not Vanessa. Vanny destroys Glitchtrap, not Vanessa. But if Vanny is still around without Glitchtrap, how could that be? Well, there's a few different ways I can see this. First, while Glitchtrap is destroyed, the Mimic still isn't. Remember, as I said earlier, while Glitchtrap is always the Mimic isn't always Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap is only one piece of the Mimic program. The basic Mimic could still be possessing Vanny, or possibly, Vanny could have something to do with the constant reappearances of the baby plushies. Who knows, I'm just tossing out ideas at this point. But what if there's actually a new Vanny? Back in Frailty, the first Tales from the Pizza story, the main character Jessica constantly feels guilty for something that happened in the past. She's also an Eleanor victim, which is very interesting. But what if her experience with Eleanor isn't what she feels guilty for? Obviously she regrets it, but what if her guilt stems from something else? Something interesting I noticed in Frailty is the fact that Jessica, for some reason, has a white rabbit's foot. Why? Who knows, but is it possible that there was a point where Jessica was Vanny? Maybe it's a bit of a wild idea, and maybe it's even a stupid one, I don't know, but it's a random detail that doesn't have any resolution. So, is it possible that Vanessa wasn't the first one to don the White Rabbit costume? Maybe Jessica was. In that case, what if there's now a new Vanny? Not Jessica, not Vanessa, but I don't know, maybe Cassie. We are reminded about how Cassie gets the Vanny mask, and one of the Ruin endings, the Brazil ending, has her put on the mask before seeing a fake reality of everything working out fine, and her breathing calms, just like, by the way, Vanessa's breath calms when she puts on the Vanny mask in Curse of Dreadbear. We know that in this ending, the Mimic must have caught her, but does that mean she died? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe instead, Cassie just got overtaken by the Mimic and is now the new Vanny. Again, I'm not certain about this idea, but I do think it's interesting that Vanny might be sticking around even without Glitchtrap. I'm just trying to figure out how, I'm trying to make sense of it all, but who knows, maybe she's not sticking around and actually is completely free. But I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. This is just a whole idea that I came up with, and I don't know if other people are coming up with the same idea. I've heard the idea of Cassie being the new Vanny, but I've heard that in like a way that the Mimic wants that, but not that it will be what happens. So I'm just trying to say, is it possible that it does happen? Maybe. Maybe not. But who knows? Now, that's the bulk of the theory done, but I want to talk briefly about a couple smaller ideas I have about the game and what it could tell us that don't have as much to do with the rest of the theory. First of all, when Ruin came out, a lot of people were really confused about the designs of certain characters being different, especially Roxy. Roxy's endoskeleton, while still designed like a Glamrock endoskeleton vaguely, is very different to how it looked in Security Breach, but only really in the face. I think the design change was mostly to allow her to have been one of the security nodes, but it was definitely different even though it was still recognizable as Roxy. However, this game actually offers an explanation for why she looks different. In the Roxy Repair Salon hard mode minigame, Roxy begs us to fix her, but when she isn't satisfied with our work, she tells us to just put a mask on her, and we do. That mask is the same design we see on Roxy in Ruin. It's a bit hard to say when this could have happened, but it seems to have at some point. But the final thing I want to talk about for this theory is actually the hub world. In the very first Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogue, we learn why FNAF 6 is under the Pizzaplex. Basically, Fazbear Entertainment originally intended to make the Pizza Place an accessible museum to Fazbear history. Because of the Mimic, this never ended up happening, and all that museum stuff just ended up being in the normal Pizzaplex. The hub world for Help Wanted 2 is set inside FNAF 6 as it is fully functional and designed how it should be. The idea is that the hub world is basically what the Pizza Place would have looked like if the Mimic never attacked here. That's why it's only like this when we have the mask, when the Mimic is manipulating us and making us think everything is okay, just like he does to Cassie in the Brazil ending, but then taking off the mask reveals the reality that the Mimic is truly hiding. But that's everything I wanted to talk about for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to. I do plan on doing at least one more theory on this game, and I also have a few other videos on this game planned for the near future, so stay tuned for those, and let me know in the comments what you think of this theory and whether or not you agree. But that's all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys!